So, you know, we sort of covered that you'd seen this thing, and this was obviously when you were there, when you were at Nellis, and it was 1979 that you were there. You know, I think before I got a little bit confused about the date, but it was actually 79 that you were there. And I think
at Area 51, yeah.
At Area 51, yeah. And I think one of the things you'd said in the 1998 presentation, which if people haven't seen that yet, I recommend that you track that down and watch it, because we're sort of jumping around a bit on some of these topics here, but in that it's in like a straight through sequence. But you were, you know, presumably, you know, taking meal breaks and stuff at lunchtime, and maybe you were there at evening meal time as well. And so you were hearing talk of things, you know. Was it people talking directly with you, or on the next table, or in the queue line up for food, or what was the environment?
Well, sometimes I'd have what they call box lunches. The chow hall would make box lunches that they would bring to you. It depended on your situation, if you had time to go to the mess hall or chow hall. And other times you'd go to the chow hall. The first time I was up there, I got a box lunch. I mean, nobody knew how long I was going to be up there, and the fact that they're going to have to keep bringing me back because this guy was gone. I mean, I never got any details other than he was on emergency leave. So I assumed that, you know, something happened to a family member or something. He was having to take care of that. But yeah, you know, in some ways it's a contradiction, but some of my equipment was hooked up to another room, the next room, through some cabling, and I had to press the buzzer on the next to the door to get the security guy to open it. And I said, I need to get this next room over here, and I need to test these signals from this other equipment and make sure they're going back and forth correctly. And the security guy says, you don't have access? He says, write it down, I'll give it to him. So it was frustrating for me because there were several written things back and forth, me trying to explain to these people like, specifically what signals I was looking for. So in that way, it was tightly controlled. In fact, even when you went to the bathroom, it was very awkward because there were no stalls. I mean, there was just a row of toilets. So, I mean, if you had to relieve yourself, I mean, it was very public. And there'd be a security guy, you know, standing at the door. He'd follow you down the hall and wait by the door. But in the mess hall, you'd see people that work together in different groups, and you'd hear different things. Much like you hear things when you live in Las Vegas about what's going on with the military or the government. But as far as very specific details, I had met a couple of guys. I didn't actually meet them, but I recognized a couple of guys from Nellis Air Force Base, who I later, when I ran across them at Nellis Air Force Base, we'd get together and talk, say, well, let's go have a drink or whatever. And you had to be very careful because until the fall of the Soviet Union and the Berlin Wall came down, you risked very severe penalties. You couldn't say National Security Agency. We used to kid about it and say no such agency.
Yeah.
You couldn't even say National Reconnaissance Office or NRO. I mean, they were very classified, and there were severe penalties about talking about this stuff. But after the Berlin Wall came down, it was almost like everybody was talking about everybody and everything they knew. And then all of a sudden you've got these FBI guys and these ex-CIA guys and these ex-NSA guys spilling their guts and writing books.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, I remember when the Puzzle Palace came. I remember when the book The Puzzle Palace came out, and they detailed so much of what went on in the NSA that I think everybody in the military must have bought a copy of that. For example, I've admitted numerous things that I had to lie about. For example, anytime I was on a classified assignment, you couldn't tell your wife, oh, I'm going up to Nellis Range, or I've been up to Groom Air Base, or I went to this classified briefing in Washington, D.C. It was always you were gone to training.
Yeah.
Like, I'm going to this base for 2 weeks of training, or 1 week of this, or you just weren't allowed to tell your family what you were working on and where you were at.
Yeah.
So, does that make you a liar? Well, sure it does, but that was part of the job and still is. I mean, you just don't chat it up with your wife or girlfriend and spill your guts, because you can get in trouble if they repeat something. And people have a habit of repeating stuff. If you tell your wife that she's talking to her favorite sister or something and starts talking about it, and they're listening on your phone, or somebody says, "Oh, this guy's wife's telling his sister about this stuff." I mean, back then the penalties were a lot more severe than now.
So you overheard stuff in the mess hall then, so, there was talk of various exotic technologies and so on.
Yes, well, they used a lot of terms that I didn't even know what they meant. Sometimes when I get home, I used to journal and write stuff down all the time, and back then there wasn't an internet where you could look up stuff on Google. But, you just write down unusual stuff that you heard tidbits of. And, of course, I stayed in contact with two of the guys that I recognized at Groom Air Base that worked at Nellis Air Force Base also, like I did. And then there were 5 of my friends from, by the time I had come out, I'd been friends for 25 or 30 years. And worked on black programs. Some of them the same as mine, and some similar. And
so between you,
we got together.
Stuff.
Yes, exactly. And by then we felt more freely, to sit in the corner of a bar or out on a picnic table in the evening in a park way off by yourself or something like that. Or go fishing and tell everybody everything you knew. And compare stories.
If you're working with 3 or 4 people, just a small group who have been through all the same kinds of things as you have, then you each know that you're not supposed to go outside of you're not even supposed to talk to each other really, but you're not going to,
exactly.
Once you get close, you're not going to stick to that when you each know the penalties for going outside of the group. You can at least talk within the group, and that gives you a stronger bond and so on, doesn't it? So.
Well, by the time I retired from the Air Force in '87, I'd worked a number of black programs. I'd briefed at the Pentagon. I'd briefed their staff. I briefed the Secretary and Deputy Secretary of the Air Force. So I was getting a bigger and bigger picture of what was going on over time. And then in the early 90s, I was still in contact by phone with a number of my friends. I was kind of the guy that kept everybody together, even though we moved on to different bases or different states or went to different jobs.
You were always the one that would ring up, when you had some free time, ring up and see how they were and maybe try and organise to have a meet-up. You were the kind of that in that position, yeah?
Yeah, I was kind of the hub or ringleader of information to where somebody was, or, I'd call Jerry up and say, hey, I talked to Brian, or I talked to Doc, or I talked to Sal, and he's here and he's working for this corporation. And anytime somebody was traveling, because in the business you do a lot of travel, going from one corporation to another, or one defense agency or another, and you cross paths occasionally. So you'd always go out and have drinks. So I suggested that we all take a vacation and meet out in Las Vegas. And the 5 of my closest friends that had a similar background to myself met out in Vegas more than once. And by then, I was out of the Air Force when they I got out of the Air Force. I worked for defense contracting. I also worked on some statement of works and specifications for the Department of Defense, different groups. But mainly I was a defense contractor. And I worked in positions of director of engineering, site manager, senior program engineer, several different companies, defense contractors, and several different types of positions. So in the early 90s, that's when we decided to start getting together and communicating. And of course, even then, we knew from all the way back in the 70s that you didn't talk about crap over the phone because somebody could be listening in on your conversation.
And so you carried on these meetings over several years, and did you gradually sort of collectively became concerned about what you knew in the wider picture? Is that kind of how it developed, or?
Well, first it was I think just buddies sharing stories and talking about their careers, because for so many years, for decades, we couldn't do it. And if we did do it, it was extremely cautious. But there was more of an era of, if you could trust people, then you could talk about stuff. And obviously, we trusted each other explicitly and implicitly. I can't get used to this webcam because I don't know whether to look at myself or you on the screen or up at the camera.
Yeah, I understand. It is a bit difficult because we're not face-to-face. It's always better if you can do this face-to-face, in the same room. But unfortunately, we're about 7,000 miles apart or something.
Yeah, amazing. Nice technology, that's for sure. Mm. So, yeah, we started putting pieces together, and that, some people would talk about energy technology, other people would talk about different developments in stealth technology and stealth coatings, and somebody else would bring up electronic countermeasures and the amazing things we could do. I mean, even back during the Vietnam conflict, we could make our fighter aircraft look bigger, smaller. We could make one aircraft look like six. We could give a different radar reflection showing it was a different type of aircraft, or in a different location to the enemy's radar. People have no clue how advanced technology was even back during the Vietnam conflict. What we could do with electronic countermeasures and electronic countermeasures. So we would talk about things like that, and of course, eventually UFOs, and then we started talking about the triangle and what they knew about it, and the information was sketchy at first, and then occasionally one of the guys would call up and says, I've got this friend that you ought to go, if you're ever in this city, you need to have a drink with him. I've talked to him and told him you're a good guy, or he can trust you or whatever, and he'd give me the name and phone number, and I'd make a point of getting to one city or another and meeting up with this person, and I'd get other information that added more pieces to what the big picture was.
So, again, you sort of gradually built up this sort of loose network of contacts, friends of friends that you'd go and see, or you'd either go and see them and or speak to them over the phone, and you'd sort of try and corroborate what they were telling you with what you'd already experienced yourself, or what you'd already been given from other sources.
Yes, exactly. And then it came to a point, I guess I don't know exactly when, but somewhere I've been taking notes all along, and nobody wanted to be recorded, and half the time they get uncomfortable even if you're writing stuff down, so I'd have to go back to my either rental car or my Dodge Maxi van that had a twin bed mattress in it that I traveled in a lot, and I'd just have to furiously start writing notes down. But I verified everything that I wrote about or spoke about with at least two people. For example, myself and another person are two other people.
Two other trusted friends.
So when I said publicly it was all second or third hand information, I basically did that to protect everybody.
Yeah.
Because I didn't use their real names, and I didn't say, oh, I worked on this classified program and I know this, because I could have got in major trouble. So for many years, it was all second and third hand information. But in fact, if you look at my documents and my pictures and put a bigger picture together, it's obvious that a lot of the information was also firsthand.
Right.
For example, Joe Green in Alien Rapture is based on a lot of experiences in my life.
Yeah.
And the way the government works, the way the technology was, all that stuff is absolutely true. The only fiction in Alien Rapture is the alien agenda, which was my best hypothesis.